Hey everyone, Jamie here. In this video, I would like to go over how to put together a real quick proof of concept setup to get Vitality Go's working along with SatDump as your data source to receive geostationary weather satellite information and publish it across your local network via web app entirely on a Windows host. To get started, we're going to need three pieces of software. First, we're going to need Vitality Go's itself. So I'm going to download that here. Next, we also need SatDump. Now, I'm not going to be downloading from the releases. The releases are often a little bit stale. If you're signed into GitHub, you can actually click on the little check mark here that you see next to the commit hash, and then click on Details next to Windows Build. And at the bottom of this page, go to Summary. And then at the bottom of this page, there's an artifact. And this here is a build based on the latest commit to GitHub. And then the third thing you'll need is XAMPP, I believe how it's pronounced, XAMPP. This here is an Apache and PHP stack for Windows. So I'm going to download the PHP 8.2.0 version. You should always use the latest PHP whenever applicable. So I'm going to download that here. To get started, the first thing we need to do is we need to get SatDump going so it can start receiving some pictures. So I'm going to right-click on SatDump and click Extract All, and extract those files. Now, if I were setting this up as a permanent installation, I would be creating a batch file of some kind to get this going in command line mode so it can be scheduled. There's some information about that in the docs. I'm not going to do that today. I am just going to do a live reception. So we're going to run SatDump UI. And Windows will almost always complain, just hit run anyway. Alright, so now that we're here in SatDump, I'm going to go to Recorder. And my SDR is connected over the network, over RTL TCP. Make sure to put, well, we'll set the frequency and everything later. The sample rate is 2.4 for my server, and the address for my server is 192.168.1.137. Don't try to connect to it. That's just a local host. You won't get anything. So I'm going to click, well, first I'm going to make this full screen here so I can see what I'm doing a little better. And then I'll click Start. Oh, I should set the frequency. 1694.1. Start. If you don't see anything, make sure to adjust your FFT min. Your signal's probably going to be below 0 dB. And then I always adjust this here to give me a pretty good view of the signal. And under processing, I'm just going to search for goes, and I'm doing go 16 is where my dish is pointed, so I'm going to do goes are hrit, and then I'm going to click start right here. And everything looks good. Get a nice BPSK constellation over here. My Viterbi and deframer are both synced. So I am going to let this run for a little bit, and I'll come back to you guys once I have some data on disk. Alright, and I am back. So it's been about 2.5 hours since I started recording, and if I go to my file explorer here, and I go to where SatDump is running, when you run it in live mode, SatDump will save your files in this live output folder, and it'll create a new one for each run. So if I go in here, I see that there's, let's go into images, and let's pull up the full color images just to make sure, oops, make sure they look good. Yep, and that looks good to me. So flip through them, yep, that looks great. So let's set up Vitality Go's to display these images. No matter which satellite decoding program you use, whether it's Go's Tools or SatDump, you just end up with images on the disk. Let's make these more visible and more accessible through a web app. So the first thing we need to do is install XAMPP. So I'm just going to double click on that. You can use another web stack if you want to. This is just the one that I'm most familiar with, and it's really easy to get going. And I'm just going to click through this. Now the only thing that you need to install are the required bits. So I'm going to uncheck everything else. You just need Apache and PHP. You don't need anything else. Once setup is complete, I will open the control panel, so just click Finish. And then in here, click Start next to Apache to get Apache going. And good, it went green, so clearly that's running correctly. So I'm going to minimize that. Now the next thing we need to do is load the Vitality Ghost files into Apache. So I'm going to extract what I downloaded from my GitHub earlier. And in this folder, we need to go into HTML, and I'm going to select everything and copy these files. And now I'm going to go to this PC, C, XAMPP, and htdocs. Now in this folder, you can delete everything in here. And now I'm going to paste those files that I just copied. And that loads in the core Vitality Ghost code. So the next thing I need to do is configure it. So I'm going to open the config folder here. I'm going to go back to the other window and go into the Vitality Ghost download. And then go into configs. Now I'm picking up Go 16 and I'm using SatDump. So I'm going to go into this folder. And I'm going to copy everything except for script config. That's just for the secondary scripts. And I'm going to copy that over here. Now the only file I should need to update just for the initial setup is the config.ini file. So open that up here in Notepad. There are a handful of things that should be configured. So this first bit, the SatDump API, this only works if you're launching SatDump in command line mode and you're specifying the HTTP server parameter. And this will let Vitality Ghost display the decoder statistics, your signal statistics, do you have a lock on the signal, that sort of thing. For now, I'm going to leave that disabled by leaving the semicolon in front of it. I'm also going to leave debugging disabled, and I do want to show system info, so I need to set up the admin path, the mwin path, and go16 path. You can see it gives you a little hint here that most of these contain the path to SatDump repo. And by the repo, I mean where is it actually saving the imagery you're receiving from the satellite. So in my case, that is in my downloads folder, in SatDump, live output, and then this folder right here. So when I'm saying SatDump repo, I mean the top level directory that contains all of the information from the satellite. So I'm going to copy this path. I'm going to go into my config, and I'm going to replace up through the word SatDump repo in these configs. And if we want to do a quick sanity check on this, let me just replace these and save. If I copy this path here and paste it back in the address bar of a file explorer, I should get it open. If I want to verify that mwin path is correct, this should open up the directory. Oops, let's start with admin path. This should open up the directory that has admin messages in it, and it does. And I'm going to check the mwin path as well, make sure that this one here will open up the directory that has mwin data, and it does. So that should be all we need. So I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to pretend that I live in College Park, Maryland, which is what the location is configured for. You can configure this for any other location that's under the jurisdiction of the National Weather Service, with some exceptions. Some places like Alaska and some of the Pacific Islands do their forecast data a little differently, and Vitality Ghost doesn't support it. But for most of us that are in the contiguous 48, even in Hawaii, this should work fine. That's saved. I have Apache running, so all that's left to do is open a new tab and go to localhost. And here we are. So it looks like Vitality Ghost is loaded. We can see current weather, weather summary, forecast information, even get a little radar. We can easily tab forward and back through this. Let's check out the full disk imagery, make sure that looks good. Yep, it looks good. There's color. SatDump puts a white background behind it. That's SatDump, not Vitality Ghost. And we only had time to receive a handful of images since I started receiving, but that's okay. Let's double check mesoscale imagery. Yep, there it is. Looks good. And let's take a quick look at system info. Alright, so the only thing that shows right now is the core system info. Shows that we're running Windows 11, build 22621. Shows that I'm plugged in and at 100%. If I unplug my laptop here and I refresh the page, you'll see that does reflect the current status. You can also see how much of your hard drive is used, how much of your memory is used, and clearly there is a bug there that I need to fix. I will take a look at that before releasing. And you can also see uptime, and it will indicate that SatDump is running. So if I had the SatDump API here configured and I launched SatDump in CLI mode, then I would also see some SatDump information over here as well. So this proof of concept goes to show that yes, the setup is indeed working okay. So where I would go from here is I would write a batch file that would launch SatDump in command line mode, and then figure out a way to get that to launch on startup. You either put a shortcut in the startup folder or do something in the registry to get it going. So that SatDump is running all the time. Enable Apache as a service so that it's running all the time, and you have a fully fledged Windows-based server running Vitality Goes, showing live information from one of the Goes satellites or another geostationary weather satellite if you get that working. As always, have fun with this product. Experiment with it on Linux, experiment it with on Windows. Try using Goes tools instead of SatDump, see how that works for you. That when you're done with it, you have a fairly reliable source for weather information. So as always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, or you can open an issue over on GitHub. Thanks and have a good day. Bye.